5 minutes read the rage-filled email which arrived in newsrooms, including on my desk, moments before multiple bombs ripped through Ahmedabad, killing 38 people. Await only for 5 minutes, it read, to feel the fear of death. 5.5 crore multitude of pathetic infidels who tortured us in the post-Godhra riots, asking, "Where is your Allah?" Here he is, the most supreme, the most sublime, with his punishment. Last week, several perpetrators of the Ahmedabad serial bombings of 2008, including some of the accused who authored that email, were sentenced to death by a trial court. Some involved in the Indian Mujahideen bombings are also already dead, killed fighting alongside the Islamic State. The jihadist movement itself, though, might be headed towards rebirth. Fueled by anti-Muslim violence, hate polemic, and communal schisms bred by the hijab controversy, there's been a sharp rise in support for the Popular Front of India, an organization which police and intelligence services have long alleged is serving as an incubator for the next generation of Indian jihadists. Formed in 2006, the PFI brought together several organizations which had formed across southern India in the wake of the Babri Masjid's demolition back in 1992. The organization has since grown to include the Campus Front of India and the National Women's Front, as well as a political party, the Social Democratic Party of India. Affiliates from across the country have also joined the PFI. Leaders of the organization, among them Abdul Rahman and Abdul Hamid, had occupied important roles in the Students' Islamic Movement of India, leading to accusations that the PFI is at its core just a rebranding of the Islamist student organization. The PFI has, however, pointed out that those individuals held office long before SIMI was proscribed in 2001. The organization's public agenda focuses on mainstream questions of Muslim rights, action against anti-Muslim violence, job reservations for the community, the defense of religion-based personal law. There's no hint in its official literature of any jihadist sympathies. From at least 2001, though, disturbing evidence began to mount that PFI cadre were involved in violence, even if the organization wasn't. That year, PFI members hacked off the hand of Idukki school teacher T.J. Joseph for teaching a purportedly blasphemous short story. Then, in 2013, the Kerala police discovered a camp near Kannur where PFI members were receiving training in bomb making and the use of swords. In 2014, the Kerala government filed an affidavit claiming the organization had a clandestine Islamist agenda. The Kerala government claimed that PFI members had been involved in 27 communally motivated murders and another 86 attempts to kill, part of a grim subterranean war involving the state's communists, Hindu nationalists, and Islamists. Linkages between members of the PFI and the Islamic State popped up, the intelligence services allege, inside months of the so-called caliphate being declared in Iraq and Syria. In 2016, the NIA made arrests in Kannur where they claim members of the PFI were plotting to set up a new jihadist group inspired by the Islamic State. The group, the NIA says, hoped to execute terrorist attacks across India. Former PFI members were also among 22 Kerala residents who first joined a religious cult and then left to become part of the Islamic State in Afghanistan. Members of that group have been accused of conducting fundraising drives and propaganda in support of the Islamic State since. For its part, the PFI says members who joined the Islamic State acted in defiance of what they say was organizational education, and notes that it had long warned against the jihadist group's anti-religious and anti-national nature. There is, in the NIA's records, no evidence that the PFI itself or its leadership, as opposed to its rank and file, endorsed jihadism. Instead, its language is studiously constitutionalist. New Delhi hasn't so far prescribed the PFI, in spite of calls by the chief ministers of Assam and Uttar Pradesh. That might be because of lack of evidence, but it's also fueled suspicions it sees political utility in the organization, which is challenging established Muslim leadership in many states. Like SIMI before it, though, the PFI could end up discovering that riding the communal tiger is a dangerous business. SIMI's own genesis lay in the Jamaat-e-Islami, founded by the influential ideologue Sayyid Abu Ala Maududi. In a 1939 essay, Maududi argued that the pursuit of political power, rather than what he called dismissively a hodgepodge of beliefs, prayers and rituals, was the essential feature of Islam. Islam, he insisted, and I quote, is a revolutionary ideology which seeks to alter the social order of the entire world and rebuild it in conformity with its own tenets and ideals. And if you think that sounds vaguely communist, well, Maududi was very influenced by the communist cells which had brought about the Russian Revolution. Although Maududi's ideas would found the basis of the modern jihadist movement in West Asia, the Jamaat in India came to the conclusion that defending the secular state was the sole viable defense against Hindu communalism. The Jamaat founded SIMI in 1977 in an effort to reach out to young people. 5 years later, it distanced itself from the group, concerned with the radical polemics of some of its leaders. By then, though, it was too late. SIMI continued to grow, building mass legitimacy through campaigns against pornography, drug use, and holding religious education classes, much like the PFI does. From the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1992, SIMI's language, scholar Yoginder Sikand has recorded, grew combative and vitriolic, with pamphlets warning that Muslims comfortable in a secular society were headed to hell. Soon after, the movement put up posters calling on Muslims to follow the example of the medieval warlord Mahmud Ghaznavi, who, as you know, demolished many temples, to avenge the destruction of mosques in India. In a 1996 statement, SIMI declared that since democracy and secularism had failed to protect Muslims, the sole option for them was to struggle for a caliphate. Like the PFI's Islamic State leaning members, the Indian Mujahideen's founders decided SIMI's talk wasn't enough and soon split from the group. From 2001, co-members of these groups travelled to Pakistan for military training. The communal massacres that ripped through Gujarat in 2002 gave this core of jihadists momentum. In 2004, dozens of new recruits met in Bhatkal for the first time in a series of training exercises. A network of safe houses and bomb fabrication facilities were set up for the Indian Mujahideen's 2005 to 2008 urban terror campaign, which included Ahmedabad. Although Indian police and intelligence services have since 2008 become increasingly adept at disrupting terror cells like these, the problem goes deeper. There has been a steady flow of jihadists, often from middle class, educated families and backgrounds, into the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. The PFI isn't the only platform for such mobilization, of course. The NIA has made arrests involving several separate networks, some centered around fundamentalist clerics and others that simply grew online. Like in 1992 and 2002, anti-Muslim political invective and communal violence is pushing some young Muslims to seek vengeance against their homeland. For students of the jihadist movement in India, the lesson is a simple one. Organizations like the PFI might be incubating terrorists, but they're being reared and raised on hate. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint.